There really is no other place like California, but more specifically, Northern California. And nestled in the heart of it lies Siskiyou County, the backbone of California's gold rush and one of the most ecologically diverse places in the world. In late May, me and my father decided to do a late spring trek through the Russian wilderness, a 20 square mile area added to a list of wildernesses of California that were designated by Congress in 1984. It's the smallest of California's wildernesses, but it still remains popular for a lot of locals and regional residents of the area. We started our morning at Fort Jones, driving through an area that held more gold than most other areas of California in the late 1800s.
Man, you're a pretty one, aren't you?
After an hour drive southwest to Etna and just past, we arrived at one of the wilderness's major trailheads at Taylor Lake. I was elated and a little bit fearful of the snow that dropped the night before, a surprise for being almost summer. We're going to be heading up to Hogan Lake, which is about a 5-mile jaunt up this crest. Right over there, there's I'd say about an inch or more of snow on the ground, which is going to make for really interesting and gorgeous scenery, so we're going to get on the trail. Our first landmark was Taylor Lake, but we had over 4 more miles to walk to end up at our first stop for night 1, Hogan Lake, which is just south of Taylor.
Go ahead.
The sheer amount of wildlife, water, and plants we've seen on our way up and over was spectacular. There were so many plants, including western wallflower, creeping phlox, and early growth corn lily, not to mention many more we find later the next day. After a few hours, we arrived at Hogan Lake, where we let our feet air out for a bit before we began fishing. It wasn't spectacular, but we caught our share. And during the downtime, I noticed dozens upon dozens of one of the coolest and most toxic animals in the Pacific Northwest, the rough-skinned newt. It contains tetrodotoxin, a neurotoxin much more potent than arsenic or cyanide, but other than that, this newt is pretty much harmless and likes to be left alone. After watching the newts eat caddisflies for a bit, I headed to the creek nearby to see if I could spot any trout. So I'm in a meadow stretch of a creek that's full of brook trout in this one pool, so I'm gonna see if I can't catch one on a net pattern. As I was preparing to cast, I watched this brook trout sip bugs right off the surface. Little did he know I was very sneaky with my cast, and he would become dinner for that night. I always release native trout and keep brook and brown trout for food because they aren't from the West Coast. Brown trout are from Europe and brook trout are from the East Coast. After me and my father finished fishing, we headed back to camp with our trout and proceeded to prep our meals, one being freeze-dried and the other fresh fish, which was a surprisingly good combination. So everyone, we are at Hogan Lake in the Russian wilderness. We just got done cooking our Mountain House adventure meals. We had lasagna tonight, and according to my dad, it is absolutely amazing. We had Kentucky mules. We packed in whiskey and ginger beer, and we got a fire going. We caught 5 brook trout, filleted them out, did garlic, salt, pepper, butter, lemon, and we are living like kings out here at 6,000 feet, so this is the place to come. We were really happy with how the day had went, so we relaxed the rest of the night and were eager to start our hike to Big Blue Lake the next morning.
today. As you can see, we have Hogan Creek that's running in here in the form of a waterfall down to Hogan Lake. We're going to go ahead and skirt our way around the perimeter here of the lake, come up over here on this ridge, and there's a slight little canyon, and we're going to go ahead and take that all the way up onto the ridge top, and then cut across up there at the top where you can see Hogan Creek as it's spilling over that saddle. And then we'll crest that saddle and drop down into Big Blue Lake.
The main challenge with hiking to Big Blue Lake is, well, there is no trail. It's all cross country, and also it's straight up, which hurt the ankles and knees of both of us. It was hard to enjoy the flora, but we managed to see plenty of curleaf mountain mahogany, incense cedar, which was a surprise for our elevation and terrain, as well as shooting star and western white pine as we were nearing the lake. We eventually summited and reached the lake, which is by far one of the prettiest lakes in Northern California.
All right, so we just got up to Big Blue, and tell me how'd you enjoy this?
Well, I'd have to tell you that the hike was hell. Extremely strenuous, not moderate, not easy, but extremely strenuous. But as you look at the lake down below at Big Blue, you'll see that it was all worth it.
After we arrived, I began fly fishing, but oddly enough, the trout didn't want to touch any of my flies, but would gladly hit a rooster tail? That's never happened to me before. And just as surprising, I had never caught a brown trout from alpine lakes before. And these were some of the most colorful brown trout I had ever seen. We released all of our fish but two, and enjoyed the buttered trout as me and my dad talked about the world's many wonders. Life was good as we were enjoying our last night at the lake. I keep thinking to myself, there's so much unexplored left. And by that definition, so much more knowledge to gain about the planet. How would I know that the Engelmann spruce were rare in California, or that there are dozens upon dozens of wildernesses out west that few really know about? It's why we explore California's smallest wilderness, and it's why freedom will forever run wild in the Russian mountains of Northern California.